Hey gang, Craig Ripley here. Welcome once again to Living Off the Slab. In this episode, we are going to continue our discussion on the clothing that you should select or might select for a long-distance motorcycle tour. Right? And we're going to also try to give some tips of things that we've learned over the years to those new riders out there. For this episode, we're going to start from the inside out, right? And we're going to talk about something that I think is extremely important to keeping yourself comfortable and healthy while you're out there on the road, and that is base layers. Specifically, what I'm going to cover in this video is underwear. That is what you're going to wear down there in your nether regions. For those new riders out there, let me tell you where I've come from and how I've gotten to the point that we're going to be discussing in this video. And I started riding when I was like 19 years old, and I rode up into my mid-20s before life got in the way and I went on to other things. Right, and during those few years when I was riding as a youngster, I didn't know anything about motorcycle clothing. I knew nothing about how to ride a motorcycle, to be honest with you. I learned from my friends who learned from their friends, and nobody really knew how to do it the right way. We just kind of made it up as we went along. As I got back into motorcycling some 20 years later or so, at that point, I wanted to start really doing some touring because one of my goals was to ride across the country. I started going up on little trips up into Vermont and New Hampshire and those kinds of places. And I would just wear the cotton underwear that I just had in my drawer because I didn't know any better at that time. Now, of course, after a few days of riding in the hot summer sun in humid New England, what you do is you end up sitting in a pile of your own sweat, basically, right? You end up with your cotton underwear that can absorb 27 times its weight in water, right? Just absolutely soaked, and all of that water is sitting up against your skin all day, day after day. And after doing that over and over and over again, day after day, well, you can develop a condition called monkey butt. Now, be honest out there, how many of you guys who have done any touring out there have had monkey butt, right? I know I have. It is not comfortable, right? And you want to avoid that at all costs. So what is monkey butt? Well, that's a condition where because of the pressure of you sitting on your seat and the water, the sweat that you're sitting in as well, right, that can irritate your skin down there in your buttocks and in your groin, and it can cause what is really known as contact irritant dermatitis. But in more, common terms, it's known as monkey butt because your butt gets swollen and it gets really red and it looks like a baboon's ass. I mean, there's no delicate way to say it. After learning my lesson, yes, the hard way, right, I decided to go out and get a different kind of underwear, something that wasn't going to absorb so much water and wasn't going to allow that water to stay so close up against my skin. And so what I did is I started riding in Under Armour, right? Under Armour is made with kind of a lycra, rayon, spandex material. It's actually a blend of different fibers in there. But it allows your sweat to pass through it and be evaporated more quickly. Now, of course, when you are sitting on your saddle, there's not a lot of ventilation down there. So these do still get wet, but they don't hold anywhere near the kind of water, the kind of sweat that a pair of cotton underwear does. I continued to use Under Armour for several years, right? And in fact, the time that I made that video 3 years ago about motorcycle clothing, I was still using it. But about that time, just shortly after I made that video, I got introduced into another brand that is what I'm using today and what I'm going to take on this Alaska trip. So what happened to me about the time that I made that last video is I was given a bunch of clothing by one of my friends who was getting out of motorcycle riding. And in it was a couple of pairs of these shorts. And these shorts are from LD Comfort, and that stands for Long Distance Comfort. And they're specifically made with the long-distance motorcycle touring rider in mind. Now, as I said, when I first got these, I really didn't know what they were. They were just in a bunch of clothing that I was given, right? But as I started wearing them, I started realizing how comfortable they were and how comfortable I was staying while I was out on a long ride. Right, before we go on, let me address this little patch here that you might notice on these LD Comfort shorts. Right, that is what's called a roo fly. Obviously for kangaroo, because it looks a little bit like a kangaroo's pouch. And what that is a specially designed fly that lets you, well, get to your plumbing a little more quickly and easily on a comfort stop than you normally would from the normally side opening kind of flies, right? This is much easier, and even though, I'll tell you, when I first got it, I didn't really know what to make of it. I thought it might be some European design or something, but it's not. These are 100% made in the USA, and it's really a cool design. I tell you, it works great. It makes it much easier during a comfort stop. So to give you a little background on the LD Comfort, they were developed by a gentleman named Mario Winkleman, who himself was an iron butt rider, right? He's been involved with the Iron Butt Riders Association for a number of years, and he developed these things, given that he had a background in working with some synthetic fibers, so that guys who were out there doing these long distance rides, 1,000 miles in under 24 hours, so you're just kind of sitting on your bike and all you do is stop to get gas and get back on it and go again, right? These are real feats of endurance. And so he developed these to help keep those guys cool and keep them dry while they were on these long distance endurance rides. Even though most of us aren't going to be doing some endurance riding, right? We're just going to go out on a tour. These things really have direct benefit to what we're going to be doing on bike as well. So why are these things better than something like the Under Armour? Well, primarily because this is a dual layer design. So in order to understand that, let me give you a little bit of a background on how these fabrics work, or how they're supposed to work. The fabric that these kind of garments are made out of are known as wicking fibers, and they are typically some kind of synthetic fiber, some blend of synthetic fibers, and often wool as well in the case of something like smart wool products. But most often they're just blends of synthetic fibers that allow water to be absorbed into the spaces between the threads. The fibers themselves, they don't absorb water like a cotton fiber does. A cotton fiber has spaces in the fiber itself, and that's why it holds so much water within itself. But these synthetic fibers, they, in theory, allow the water to come into them and then be evaporated more easily, pass through them and get away from the skin. So why is the LD Comfort superior to something like a single layer fabric that you find in the Under Armour? Well, that's because they are a dual layer fabric. That's actually 2 layers of fabric that are fused together in the manufacturing process. Right? The inner layer that you see here is feels a little fluffier, but it actually has a very tight weave in it. There are very small spaces between the individual fibers, whereas the outer layer has larger spaces between the individual fibers. And what happens is that the inner layer takes the sweat from your skin, absorbs it, and moves it very quickly to the outer layer where it spreads out and gets dispersed again so that it can be evaporated and thus cooling you off. Right? Also, though, it's keeping your skin dry. Now, are there any drawbacks to these? Well, if there are, it might be that because there are the dual layer fabric, they're a little thicker, so they might be a tad bit warmer than some of the other underwear that's out there on the market. But you're staying dry, so to me, that is a big, big benefit and a great trade-off to make. Also, they are expensive, right? This is a very specialty fabric with a very expensive manufacturing process, so they cost about $45 a pair. Whereas you can go out and buy some of the other kind of brands out there for probably 3 pair for 25 or 30 bucks. So going with something, like the Under Armour is definitely cheaper, right? But it's not going to be as effective as going with something like the LD Comfort. So now I look at it this way, right? This is basically a specialty piece of clothing that's designed to do one job, and that's keep you dry while you're out there in the heat and while you're riding your motorcycle. So much like buying a jacket or buying a helmet for motorcycle riding, right, I want the best. I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that I've learned, again, I guess I'm speaking to the new riders here, one of the things I've learned over the years is you can spend tons of money buying cheap stuff over and over and over again, right, trying to find something that works for you. And again, I've been there with helmets shorts, I've been there with jackets, been there with underwear as well. Right, once you find something that really works for you, then you want to stick with it. And you'll wish that you had just gone and bought the good quality stuff right in the first place. If you're getting out there on the road and you're going to do 500-mile days like we're going to be doing in the first week and the last week of this trip, then you want to have quality gear that you're wearing, and you don't want to end up with getting problems down in those places where you're going to be sitting on your saddle day after day. The LD Comfort also makes a tight as well, right? The same material, the same idea, but it's a tight. It's a full length tight, again, to help keep not only your butt dry, but it'll help keep all of your legs dry as well. And to be honest with you, I'm really going towards wearing these things when I tour now, right? It really makes you comfortable, or keeps you comfortable while you're out there riding, especially if you're under a pair of riding pants with pads and all of those things on. I find that wearing a full set of tights really helps, keep me comfortable during the day. So I'm probably going to be carrying a couple pair of these when we go up to Alaska. Equally important as what you're wearing for underwear is what you're wearing for socks. You have all of the same issues with water retention down in your feet as you do in your butt, right, in your groin area. Right, so you want to wear a sock that, again, is going to do the same kind of things that we were just talking about with underwear. This particular one happens to be from Revit. I really like these socks. They're a synthetic sock, and they, again, help to move water out away from your feet, don't hold a lot of sweat. But LD Comfort and a lot of other people make similar kind of socks. I'm not here to sell you a particular brand, just want you to know what to look for. Again, as a new rider, again, I would go with something like this, or you can try your cotton socks and so forth and see how they work. But if you're out there and you're getting on the road for the first time, doing a long distance tour, I suggest, again, going with something like this, some kind of synthetic sock and underwear. It'll save you a world of trouble and from learning the hard way. So how much of all this am I going to be carrying? Well, right now I'm planning on carrying 2 pair of full-length tights, 2 pair of the shorts, right, and then 4 pair of socks. All right, gang, that's it for this episode. Once again, thank you for those who continue to buy from Twisted Throttle by linking to my website. You do get a discount when you do that, I believe a 10% discount, and of course it helps to keep these videos coming. Also remember, we are supporting Homes for Our Troops for this Alaska trip, so there's a link to donate right on the home page of my website. Please visit that at www.livingofftheslab.com, and of course there will be show notes out there that go along with this video and all the other videos in the series. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.